Hello internet, and today's video is going to be another book opinion, those videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book, and today's book is going to be The Star-Touched Queen by Roshani Chokshi. I cannot say that last name because it doesn't work on my tongue, so I'm assuming you know this book and this author. The author's name will be written down below. And I'm really, really sorry, okay? I apologize. I feel really bad every time, but I can't read out loud. There, I said it. I just can't read things out loud if I've never heard it before, and sometimes not even then. So Star-Touched Queen is a sort of East Indian based fairy tale that is a Hades Persephone story. So it was fairly enjoyable. First, we're going to talk about how I read this on audiobook. So I read this on audiobook, and the audiobook was terrible sometimes. Like, the most part it was good, but they did this thing that I don't understand. And the narrator, when it was talking about the inner dialogue of our main character, was an American English accent, or a very neutral English accent. And I was okay with that. Like, I wasn't offended. But whenever the characters would speak to each other, the main character and all the characters around there, they would have an East Indian accent of some version, some variety, right? That would really draw you into this cultural tale and give you like the ambiance of kind of where you are in the world and remind you of that. And those were beautifully done. And I liked it. But I didn't understand why the main character talked with an East Indian accent, but her thoughts were in a neutral American accent. Really threw me off. Constantly. Made no sense. Didn't get why they did that. Nope, not at all. Like, I felt like they either had to go one or the other. Like, no. You can't do that to me. Don't read the audiobook, just read it for yourself. You'd probably enjoy it more because that messed me up and drew me out of the story. So now on to what this story is about. So this story is about a girl who lives in a kingdom. She has gotten a horoscope destiny type thing, and her kingdom really believes in horoscopes and what it means for your future. And she has one that basically says whoever marries her, it's going to be filled with death and destruction and like horrible stuff. And so no one wants to marry her, but her father decides to arrange a marriage for her, but not like nicely. He's basically going to sell her into marriage for the sake of his own kingdom. However, turns out that's not his full plan. And I'll leave you to figure out what his full plan is. Needless to say, he's not the best dad in the world to me. Not even close. But she ends up marrying a man from another land. And she just thinks it's another country at first, but it's not. And I wish that this description and synopsis explained this, because I thought he was just like a few countries over, you know, and she just didn't travel a lot. No, he lives in an entirely different dimension, in the in-between world between the reality that we live in and that humans live in, and the reality of like monsters of the supernatural. So yeah, she basically married a god king of another dimension. He rules over the in-between, between the supernatural world and then the human world. And why didn't I know that before I went in? I have no idea. Overall, that was a very interesting concept. I liked how the story went. It read very much as a novelized fairy tale to me. And I enjoyed it because I like fairy tales. However, I did have one big issue with the story. And the storytelling style, and it's that it read like a novelized fairy tale. Let me explain. So in fairy tales, they don't really have to explain the world, the environment, the magic. We don't really have to meet a lot of characters outside of the main characters or the important side characters. Those are of no relevance, right? No relevance at all. We're just going from point A to point B to point C to point D. It works in fairy tales. It works perfectly. You question things, but you don't have enough time to. But in this book, you don't really have enough time to question it, but because it reads so much like a novel and has that fairy tale air to it rather than reading like a fairy tale, you're left wondering why you couldn't explore the world more. And it sounded like a really beautiful world when we got to stop and look at it. Like, I wanted this character to go visit the market. I think there's like this monster market and they pass through it. And it sounded like such a wonderful place. Like, go there for a little bit. I wanted to see more of the palace, and it turns out she was there for a long time, but it's just a few pages. It turns out she was there for a long time, and she really never gets a chance to explore it. We never get the chance to see a lot of it, to really like take this palace in. And this continues throughout the book, where I would have just liked us to stop and look around and explore. And this book apparently takes over a long period of time, so I would have liked to see what she was seeing. But all I got to see was her bedroom, and that was boring. I wanted to see the amazing cool stuff that was outside in this other dimensional world of in-between, and I didn't. I got to see little glimmers from afar. And then I was whisked away onto a quest. And I was like, why don't we ever stop on this quest and take in the scenery? Let's take this scenic route on this quest so I can see things in this world. But we didn't. And I was disappointed. So I didn't like how this book played out. I think the quest elements, they were good. I think why it was happening, the backstory, all of that was fascinating, but I do think that it could have been a lot more developed, because I really would have liked to see the world, to see more of the backstory, to get intricacies, to fully visualize a thing. That's why a couple of videos ago last year I mentioned this book, and I said that this book would really be good as a movie of some sort, because I feel like this is a very visual story. If you could visually see all of these things going around, it wouldn't feel as weird that they're just jumping from point A to point B to point C to point D to get the whole quest and fairy tale thing over with. But since we never get a chance to stop and fully see the world that she's in, it's like you're missing out a piece of something that you really want. So it draws you back, because you start to really notice that you don't know what it looks like where she is. You can't picture it really well, but it sounds like a pretty cool place. You just kind of wish she told you the color of the grass or something, because you want to know those things. So I bought the second book for this series. It's kind of a sequel, but it's they're both sort of standalones, but they're connected, and it follows the main girl's sister. And I was more interested in her in this book. I was more interested in the sister in this book. So I'm hoping that the second book will be more world building in it, and we're gonna get to see more world building and a lot more character interaction. This book only had a couple characters, and I would have liked to see more character interaction outside of just the two main characters and a couple side characters that hold some relevance. So I just don't think this novelization of a fairy tale worked, because a lot of those traditional fairy tale things, when they do fairy tales to tell the story, really drew back this book, because it didn't have enough of that novelization, but it had enough to draw you to the fact that it was using a fairy tale style to tell the story, that you were missing a lot of things that you need for a novel. So I hope that made sense. I feel like I say that a lot, but I hope I'm making sense here. Yes. So this is a very decent book. If you like fairy tales, if you like Hades Persephone stories, you might like this book. Personally, it was just an okay book. I think it could have been a lot better, and I probably would have loved it a lot more if I didn't see so many things in it that I thought could really be improved on to make the story even more fascinating and even more beautiful for the reader. But otherwise, it's enjoyable. So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.